In the vast darkness of space, the planet Zathar glowed like a jewel among the stars. Its surface shimmered with silver oceans and towering crystal cities. The people of Zathar were strong, intelligent, and proud. They had conquered countless worlds and built an empire that stretched across 100 galaxies. At the very heart of this empire was the alien queen, Solara. She was known throughout the stars as a ruler of unmatched power. Her mind was sharp, her strategies flawless, and her courage unshakable. No enemy had ever challenged her for long, and no ally had ever surprised her, until the humans arrived. The humans were fragile, small, and seemingly unremarkable. Their technology was crude compared to the sophisticated marvels of the Zathari. Solara had watched from afar, curious but skeptical. They had survived on their small planet Earth, despite challenges far greater than themselves. Still, in the eyes of the Queen, they were weak. Yet there was something about this species that made her pause, a spark of resilience she had never seen before. Jonathan Hale was one of those humans. He was tall, with calm brown eyes that seemed to look at everything clearly and deeply. He was not a soldier, nor a scientist of the usual fame. He was a diplomat, chosen to represent Earth in the first official contact with the Zathari Empire. Jonathan knew the risk. Many humans feared the vastness of space and the unknown intelligence of alien civilizations. Yet he felt a strange confidence as he approached Zathar's orbit. Solara observed the approaching human vessel from the bridge of her palace ship. She did not expect much. A fragile creature, she murmured to herself, sent to speak with a queen who commands millions. Will he tremble and falter? But when Jonathan's ship docked and he stepped onto Zathar's silver platform, she noticed something unusual. His gaze was steady and his movements were calm. He did not bow in fear, nor did he show the nervous energy she had seen in other species. Instead, he carried himself with quiet dignity, as if he belonged in the midst of the stars. The first meeting took place in the Grand Hall, a room of towering crystal walls that reflected light in every color. Solara sat on her throne, her form regal and commanding. Jonathan stood before her, hands lightly folded. Around them, Zathari advisors and guards waited silently. The atmosphere was tense, charged with curiosity and caution. "Welcome to Zathar," Solara said, her voice calm but strong. It echoed through the hall like a musical command. "I am Queen Solara, ruler of this empire. Speak your purpose." Jonathan bowed respectfully, not with fear, but with a gesture of acknowledgement. "I am Jonathan Hale," he said clearly. "I come on behalf of Earth. We seek friendship and understanding with the Zathari Empire. Our worlds may be different, but we believe cooperation can benefit both species." Solara tilted her head slightly, studying him. She could sense no hidden threats, no advanced strategies lurking in his mind. Yet there was something in the way he spoke, in the clarity of his voice and the steadiness of his gaze that caught her attention. "Friendship," she repeated softly, almost as if tasting the word. "Humans value friendship? And you believe it can survive among the stars where strength is everything?" Jonathan nodded. "Strength is important, but so is intelligence, courage, and understanding. Sometimes the smallest mind can see what the greatest mind cannot, and sometimes the seemingly weak can change the course of events." Solara's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in curiosity. She had never met a being who spoke so boldly and yet so calmly. Most species she encountered either bowed immediately or tried to test her with tricks. Jonathan did neither. He was confident, not arrogant, and respectful, not fearful. For the first time, Solara wondered if she had underestimated humans entirely. Over the next days, Jonathan toured the palace and the city. He observed the Zathari people, their technology, their lifestyle, and even their strategy rooms. Unlike other ambassadors, he did not gawk or show fear. He asked questions not as a challenge, but to understand. He spoke with engineers, soldiers, and scholars, learning about their strengths and their methods. Every step of the way, he impressed Solara's advisors. Some even whispered that the human's mind was sharp and adaptable, in ways that reminded them of ancient Zathari leaders. Solara, however, watched silently. She was both intrigued and cautious. Humans were fragile, yes, but Jonathan's calm and intelligence were unusual. She invited him to private discussions, speaking of empire, strategy, and even philosophy. Jonathan listened, asked thoughtful questions, and offered ideas that were simple yet profound. He suggested ways to manage resources more efficiently, ways to communicate across long distances faster, and even small improvements to some Zathari technology. Your ideas are interesting, Solara remarked one evening, standing on the balcony of her palace watching the twin moons of Zathar shine. I did not expect a human to see solutions where my scholars see only problems. Jonathan smiled politely. We have always survived by noticing what others overlook. Strength is not always physical. Sometimes understanding and observation are more powerful than weapons. Solara found herself thinking about these words long after Jonathan returned to his quarters. His presence was not just a curiosity. It was a challenge. She realized that humans, though weak in appearance, could possess a different kind of power, one that could complement the might of her empire. One night, a celebration was held in honor of the human ambassador. Music echoed through the crystal halls and dancers moved gracefully under lights that shimmered like stars. Solara watched from above, and Jonathan, without effort, mingled with the people, learning their stories and sharing his own. His openness and kindness left a mark on the Zathari citizens, who had rarely seen a visitor from another world treated with such ease and respect. As the night ended, Solara approached Jonathan privately. "You are unlike any human I have ever studied," she said softly, her tone more personal than formal. "I admit I did not expect much from your species, but you are clever, patient, and strong in ways I do not fully understand." Jonathan bowed lightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I do not seek to impress, only to learn and to build understanding between our peoples." For the first time in her life, Solara felt an unfamiliar warmth. It was not the heat of victory or the thrill of battle. It was curiosity, admiration, and something else she had not anticipated: respect. She found herself smiling, a small, rare gesture. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as I believed," she murmured. The days that followed strengthened their alliance. Jonathan's human intuition and calm confidence began influencing decisions in the palace. Solara, who had always relied on brute strength and advanced technology, began to see the value of patience, observation, and simple but clever solutions. Their partnership, initially strategic, began to grow into a bond neither of them expected. By the time the week ended, Solara understood that Jonathan's presence was more than diplomatic. He was a mind she could respect, a companion she could trust, and perhaps unknowingly someone whose strength could rival her own. The alien queen, so used to power and control, realized that she had underestimated humans, not because they lacked strength, but because their strength was hidden, quiet, and surprising. And in that realization, the galaxy began to shift. The fragile human ambassador, Jonathan Hale, had entered the heart of an empire built on power, and he carried with him a hidden force that even the mighty alien queen had never anticipated. For weeks after Jonathan's arrival, the Zathari Empire had been calm. The streets of Zathar shimmered under the twin moons, and the crystal towers reflected the golden light of the setting suns. Queen Solara had begun to see the value of Jonathan's calm presence and intelligence. His advice on resource management, communication, and diplomacy had already improved her empire's efficiency. But peace in the galaxy was always fleeting. One morning, alarms echoed through the palace halls, a sound that cut through the calm like lightning. Solara, standing on her balcony, saw dark shapes approaching the planet's atmosphere. Her sharp eyes narrowed as she realized this was no ordinary meteor shower or routine patrol. These ships were sleek, black, and armed with unfamiliar energy weapons. They moved with precision and speed, unlike any fleet she had encountered. Solara's advisors hurried to her side, bowing in urgency. "Your Majesty," said Commander Vareth, her most trusted general, "we are under attack. The invaders, unknown origin, are advancing toward the capital." Solara's mind raced. She had faced countless enemies before, but these ships were strange. "How do they move so fast?" she demanded, her voice steady but edged with concern. "And their weapons. None of our shields respond properly. It is as if they anticipate every move." Jonathan, who had been observing the city from a nearby tower, stepped forward calmly. "Your Majesty," he said, "these weapons may be advanced, but they seem rigid. They follow patterns. Perhaps we can use that to our advantage." Solara looked at him surprised. "Patterns?" "Explain, human. How can you see a pattern in an enemy I cannot even identify?" Jonathan smiled slightly. "On Earth, we study nature and behavior to predict outcomes. Even machines have rules. I believe these invaders rely on a predictable method. If we can anticipate it, we can find a weakness." Solara raised an eyebrow. "Predictable? She had never thought an invader could be predictable to anyone, let alone a fragile human. But she had learned to listen to Jonathan, and his calm confidence demanded consideration. "Very well. Show me." Together they retreated to the palace's strategy room. Holographic displays projected the approaching fleet, their movements traced in glowing blue lines. Jonathan studied the patterns carefully, pointing out subtle repetitions in the fleet's formation. "See here," he said. "Their front lines move in a fixed rhythm, almost like a dance. If we can anticipate the rhythm, we can counter it before they strike." Solara's generals exchanged doubtful glances. "A human suggesting a counterattack against ships we cannot even touch?" one muttered. Solara silenced them with a sharp look. "Listen to him," she said. "If he is right, we may survive this attack. If he is wrong, well, we will fight as we always have." Over the next hours, Jonathan coordinated with Solara's engineers and soldiers, suggesting small but effective changes. He advised repositioning energy shields at precise angles, using decoys to distract the enemy, and sending out smaller scout ships to lure attackers into traps. The Zathari had never used such tactics before. Their strategy relied on overwhelming power, not subtle maneuvering. Yet slowly the human suggestions began to show results. When the enemy fleet entered the atmosphere, chaos erupted in the skies above Zathar. Energy beams flashed, shields flared, and alarms blared. Solara led her warriors into battle, her crystalline armor glinting in the light of exploding ships. Yet even her immense power was challenged by the enemy's precision. Jonathan remained calm, standing in the strategy room, directing small squads and coordinating defenses. His orders were precise, simple, and effective. Using his knowledge of the enemy's predictable patterns, the Zathari managed to evade attacks and strike at critical weak points. Slowly the tide began to turn. Solara watched in amazement. "It is working," she whispered to herself. "This human, he sees what we cannot." As the battle continued, Jonathan devised a bold maneuver. He suggested creating an illusion, using holograms of decoy ships to confuse the enemy fleet, drawing them into a narrow canyon where their ships would be trapped. The idea seemed reckless, but Solara trusted him. She gave the order, and her fleet executed the plan with precision. The enemy fell into the trap. Their ships, once powerful and terrifying, were now confined and vulnerable. Zathari forces struck decisively, disabling key vessels and forcing the rest to retreat. Explosions lit the skies and cheers erupted across the city as the threat was finally contained. Solara descended to the battlefield herself, her armor scratched and scorched, but her spirit unbroken. She found Jonathan standing calmly amidst the chaos, his human presence untouched by fear or excitement. You turned the battle," she said, awe in her voice. "I thought I underestimated you." Jonathan shook his head. "I did not fight alone, Your Majesty. Your warriors and your technology are incredible. I only suggested a way to use them differently." Solara studied him closely. This was not the first time she had seen humans act in unexpected ways, but it was the first time she had realized that a human mind could challenge even her expectations of strength and power. "Your mind, it is as sharp as a Zathari general," she said softly, "perhaps sharper." The aftermath of the battle brought reflection and gratitude. Solara walked through the streets, seeing her citizens repairing damages and celebrating survival. She observed the humans and Zathari working side by side, following Jonathan's guidance. It was a scene of cooperation, ingenuity, and hope, a new way of thinking for her empire. Later in the palace, Solara held a private council with Jonathan. "You saved countless lives today," she said. "Not with strength, but with insight. I underestimated the power a human can have." Jonathan smiled modestly. "I only used what humans have always used: creativity, observation, and patience. Sometimes the smallest solutions can solve the biggest problems." Solara nodded slowly. Her empire had faced countless threats before, yet none had taught her this lesson. Power was not only about strength or technology. It could be found in quiet minds, careful thinking, and the courage to act wisely. Jonathan's hidden power, the human ability to see patterns and make decisions calmly under pressure, was unlike anything she had ever encountered. As the twin moons rose over Zathar, casting silver light across the city, Solara stood beside Jonathan. The queen, a being who had ruled an empire for centuries, felt a sense of humility she had rarely known. She realized that she had found not only an ally in Jonathan, but also a companion whose strengths complemented her own. Yet, as calm settled over the city, a shadow lingered. The enemy had retreated, but they were not defeated. They would return stronger and more determined. Solara knew that the true test was not over, but now she did not face it alone. She had Jonathan, quiet, clever, and unexpectedly powerful. And she understood, perhaps for the first time, that sometimes the greatest strength was hidden in the most unlikely of beings. The battle had changed more than the city's skyline. It had changed Solara's perspective. She no longer saw humans as fragile or insignificant. She saw them as capable of greatness, their minds and courage offering a power that could rival even the mightiest of Zathari warriors. In the quiet moments after the battle, as the city repaired itself and the people celebrated survival, Solara and Jonathan stood together on the palace balcony. "You have taught me much," Solara said softly. "Not just about strategy, but about humans, and perhaps about myself." Jonathan looked at her calm and steady as always. "We teach each other, Your Majesty. That is how alliances last. That is how civilizations grow." Solara smiled, a rare and genuine expression. For the first time in her long life, she felt that the galaxy might hold possibilities she had never imagined, and she knew deep in her heart that with Jonathan by her side, the future, though uncertain, was full of promise. The threat from the shadows had revealed more than the enemy's strength. It had revealed the hidden power of a human mind, calm in chaos, clever in the face of danger, and for Queen Solara, that realization would change everything. The weeks following the attack on Zathar were filled with both recovery and reflection. The city shimmered under the light of its twin moons, the crystal towers repaired and polished, and the people of Zathar carried a new sense of pride. They had survived a battle that could have ended their empire, thanks to an unlikely ally, Jonathan Hale. Solara walked through the palace gardens, a place of shimmering plants and flowing streams that seemed almost alive. She often went there to think, to plan, and more recently to watch Jonathan at work. Despite the grandeur of her empire and the technology surrounding them, she found herself fascinated by his calm, observant nature. He did not rush, did not demand attention, yet his mind worked faster than any of her generals. "Your Majesty," Jonathan said as he approached, carrying a data pad filled with observations from the recent battle. "I have been analyzing the enemy's tactics. Their retreat was not permanent. They are regrouping and developing a new weapon, one that may challenge even your defenses." Solara raised an eyebrow. "A new weapon?" she asked, intrigued but not alarmed. "Do you believe they can surpass our technology?" Jonathan shook his head. "Perhaps not surpass, but it will be different. They learn quickly, but so can we. There is a way to turn their innovation against them if we act wisely." Solara considered his words. She had always relied on power, strength, fleets, and advanced technology. But Jonathan had taught her something new. Intelligence and strategy could be as decisive as brute force. "Then show me," she said. "Teach me this way of thinking that comes so naturally to you." For the next several days, Jonathan and Solara worked together tirelessly. He studied enemy patterns, analyzing their previous attacks and predicting their next moves. Solara contributed her knowledge of Zathari technology and her vast strategic experience. The combination was powerful. The two of them began to form plans that neither could have achieved alone. Jonathan suggested creating decoys and simulations to mislead the enemy. He proposed using human intuition to anticipate behavior and reactions that advanced calculations alone could not predict. The Queen's advisors watched in amazement as their leader, the mighty Solara, listened intently to a human's suggestions and implemented them. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. One evening, as the twin moons reflected off the crystal towers, Solara and Jonathan stood together on a balcony, overlooking the city. "You make this look simple," Solara said, her voice thoughtful. "But what you are doing, it is extraordinary. How can a human mind be so precise yet so flexible?" Jonathan smiled faintly. "We have to be flexible," he replied. "On Earth, survival depends on adapting. We cannot rely solely on strength or technology. We must think, observe, and find solutions where others see only obstacles." Solara's eyes softened as she studied him. She had faced countless enemies, led armies into battle, and commanded fleets across galaxies. Yet she had never encountered a mind like Jonathan's. His power was hidden, quiet, but undeniable. It was not in his strength or his weaponry, It was in his understanding, his creativity, and his ability to inspire those around him. The following days brought the enemy fleet back into view. Their ships, larger and more intimidating than before, moved with precision, their weapons charged and ready. The Zathari warriors felt a mixture of fear and determination. They had survived once, but could they survive again against a foe that had already adapted? Solara's confidence came not from her own strength, but from the quiet certainty that Jonathan's mind could find a solution. "We will not fight blindly," she told her generals. "We have a plan. Follow Jonathan's guidance and we will succeed." Jonathan worked quickly, coordinating small groups of warriors and engineers. He suggested sending scouts to provoke the enemy, creating openings that could be exploited. He devised ways to use the terrain to their advantage, turning the natural formations of Zathar into traps for the enemy fleet. Every suggestion was simple, yet its execution required precision and trust. A trust that Solara's soldiers were learning to place in him. As the battle began, the enemy ships unleashed a wave of energy that disrupted Zathari shields. For a moment it seemed as though disaster was inevitable, yet Jonathan remained calm, his eyes scanning the battlefield, his mind calculating possibilities faster than any computer. "Now," he shouted, directing a squadron to trigger the first trap. Ships moved into narrow canyons, decoys lured enemy forces away from critical areas, and energy blasts were deflected at the perfect angles. Slowly, the tide turned. The Zathari forces, guided by Jonathan's strategies, began to push the enemy back. Solara watched in awe as what seemed impossible unfolded before her eyes. At one critical moment, the enemy deployed a new type of weapon, a beam capable of bypassing shields and destroying entire fleets. Panic rippled through the Zathari ranks. Solara felt a familiar surge of urgency and fear, emotion she rarely admitted. Yet Jonathan's calm voice cut through the chaos. "Focus on the timing," he said. "The weapon moves in intervals. If we move just before it fires, we can avoid it entirely. Follow my instructions and we can counter it." Solara obeyed, trusting him completely. She issued commands based on his guidance, and the Zathari forces executed the maneuvers flawlessly. The enemy's weapon misfired, their ships became vulnerable, and the Zathari turned the attack into a decisive advantage. After hours of tense combat, the enemy fleet retreated once again, leaving Zathar intact. The city erupted in celebration, but Solara did not celebrate immediately. She found Jonathan standing at the edge of the balcony, looking out at the retreating enemy. "You did it," she said softly, approaching him. "Not with brute force, not with advanced weapons, but with your mind. You changed the course of this battle." Jonathan shook his head. "We did it together. Your strength, your warriors, your technology, they made my plans possible. I only helped guide it." Solara studied him closely. For the first time, she realized that humans were capable of something more profound than she had imagined. Their strength was not in their bodies or their technology. It was in their minds, their creativity, and their courage. Jonathan's hidden power was not hidden anymore. It was evident, undeniable, and it had saved her empire. The next morning, Solara held a council with her generals and advisors. "This human," she said, her voice commanding but filled with respect, "has proven that power is not only measured by strength or numbers. Intelligence, insight, and courage can be just as decisive. From this day forward, we will consider humans as partners, not mere observers." Her advisors murmured in surprise, some in doubt, but Solara's determination was clear. She had seen the hidden power of Jonathan Hale, and she would not forget it. His calm reasoning, quick thinking, and adaptability had saved lives and demonstrated a type of strength that the Zathari had rarely acknowledged. Jonathan continued to work with the Queen, refining strategies and preparing for the inevitable return of the enemy. Solara observed him closely, learning not only tactics but also lessons in patience, observation, and leadership. She realized that her empire had grown accustomed to a single kind of power. She had ruled through might. But now she was discovering a new kind, the quiet, profound influence of intelligence and insight. One evening, as the city glowed under the twin moons, Solara and Jonathan walked through the palace gardens. The streams reflected the light and the flowers seemed to shimmer with an almost magical brilliance. "Your people trust me," Jonathan said quietly, looking at the Zathari citizens working in the streets below. "I only hope my plans continue to serve them well." Solara shook her head, smiling softly. "You underestimate yourself, Jonathan. Your mind is a weapon, a shield, and a guide. You have changed the way I see power, and perhaps the way my people will see it as well." Jonathan looked at her, calm and humble, yet there was a quiet pride in his expression. "I only did what humans have always done: observe, think, and act wisely. But I am glad it has helped." Solara nodded, understanding that this was only the beginning. The enemy had retreated, but they would return. The galaxy would challenge them again. Yet with Jonathan by her side, she felt a confidence she had never felt before. His hidden power, his intellect, intuition, and courage was now visible to all, and it had become an essential part of her empire's defense. In the quiet of the palace, Solara realized something profound. Strength was not always visible, and power was not always measured in size or force. Sometimes the greatest power came from the mind, from calm reasoning and from the courage to act wisely. Jonathan Hale had revealed that truth, and in doing so, he had become more than an ally. He had become a partner in shaping the future of the Zathari Empire. The hidden power of a human mind, once underestimated, had now been revealed. And for Queen Solara, it was a revelation that would change not only her empire but the entire course of her life. The galaxy was calm for now. Zathar, the jewel of Solara's empire, gleamed under the twin moons, its crystal towers reflecting the golden sunlight. The city buzzed with activity, not from preparation for battle but from progress. Repairs were complete, fleets had been strengthened, and citizens went about their daily lives with renewed hope. The events of the past months had transformed the empire, not only in power but in perspective. Solara walked through the palace halls, her mind filled with thoughts of the future. The enemy had been defeated, but their presence had left a lasting impression. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown threats, and no empire could survive alone. What had changed everything, however, was not merely the battles won or the ships repaired. It was Jonathan Hale. Jonathan, the human ambassador who had been underestimated by almost everyone in the empire, had revealed strengths that Solara had never imagined possible. His intellect, calm judgment, and strategic foresight had saved countless lives. Yet it was more than that. He had united people, inspired trust, and taught the Zathari a new way of seeing power. Solara entered the strategy chamber, where Jonathan was already reviewing reports and data on the galaxy's current state. He looked up as she entered, smiling faintly. "Your Majesty," he said, "we have completed repairs and updated defenses. The Empire is ready for anything that comes next." Solara walked beside him, gazing at the holographic maps that displayed fleets, planets, and trade routes. "Yes," she said thoughtfully, "but readiness is more than technology. Strength is more than ships. True power comes from alliances, understanding, and cooperation. You have shown me that, Jonathan. You have changed the way I see leadership." Jonathan nodded. "I only guided what was already there. Your people's courage and your empire's strength made it possible. Together we discovered something greater than any weapon." Solara paused, reflecting on the recent battles. She remembered the enemy fleet, their precision and their threats. She remembered how Jonathan had calmly analyzed the situation, predicted their moves, and inspired the Zathari to act decisively. His hidden power, the human ability to see what others could not, had become the cornerstone of her empire's survival. "Then we must build on it," Solara said, her voice resolute. "We will not simply defend our empire. We will expand our understanding of the galaxy. We will form alliances not only with humans, but with other species willing to embrace cooperation over conflict." Jonathan studied her, impressed by the clarity of her vision. "It will take patience, diplomacy, and trust," he said. "But it is possible. Empires built on understanding last longer than those built on fear." Solara smiled, a rare warmth in her eyes. "Then we will start today." The first step was establishing a council that included representatives from multiple species. Solara insisted that humans, once overlooked and underestimated, hold positions of influence. Jonathan worked tirelessly to organize meetings, facilitate communication, and help bridge the differences between cultures. It was not an easy task. Language, customs, and expectations often clashed. Yet Jonathan's calm guidance and understanding of human nature proved invaluable. Solara watched as discussions unfolded. Humans proposed solutions that others had dismissed, finding compromises that balanced strength with fairness. Zathari generals, once rigid in their thinking, learned to value insight over brute force. The council grew stronger with every meeting, demonstrating that cooperation and understanding could achieve what might alone never could. News of Zathar's new approach spread across the galaxy. Neighboring planets, once wary of the Empire's power, approached with curiosity rather than fear. Solara and Jonathan welcomed ambassadors with open arms, demonstrating the value of partnership. They visited colonies, shared technology, and encouraged dialogue. Slowly, a network of trust and collaboration formed, a web that strengthened every participant. Meanwhile, life within the palace continued. Solara and Jonathan's partnership evolved beyond strategy and leadership. Their bond deepened, built on mutual respect, admiration, and a shared vision for the future. The Queen, once solitary and proud, now valued Jonathan's presence not only as a strategist but as a companion. The human in turn admired Solara's courage, wisdom, and dedication to her people. Together, they embodied a unity that inspired the Empire. One evening, as they walked along the palace gardens, the twin moons reflecting off the crystal streams, Solara spoke softly. "Jonathan, you have changed my life in ways I never imagined. Not only the Empire, but me. I see strength differently now." Jonathan looked at her, calm and steady. "And you have shown me that even the greatest minds can learn from the smallest voices. Together we can achieve what neither could alone." Solara nodded, her heart full of hope. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but with Jonathan by her side, she felt prepared for whatever challenges might arise. His hidden power, the intelligence, courage, and insight that had saved Zathar, was now openly recognized, and it had reshaped the Empire's destiny. In the weeks that followed, Solara and Jonathan continued to strengthen alliances and build infrastructure. Trade routes were expanded, communication systems improved, and joint scientific endeavors flourished. The people of Zathar marveled at the new era of prosperity, while humans and other species began to see the Empire as a beacon of hope and cooperation. Yet Solara remained vigilant. She knew that the galaxy held dangers beyond imagination, and enemies could rise again. But she also knew that power was no longer measured solely by fleets or weapons. The true strength of her empire now lay in unity, strategy, and trust, the lessons Jonathan had taught her and the example he had set. As the final phase of their plan unfolded, Solara addressed the council. "Today we celebrate not only our survival, but our transformation. We have learned that strength is not measured by might alone. Intelligence, insight, and collaboration are equally powerful, and we have proven that even the most unlikely heroes can change the course of history." Jonathan stood beside her, a steady presence that had become central to the Empire's success. "And together," he said, "we will continue to face the galaxy, learning, adapting, and growing stronger with every challenge." The council erupted in applause, but it was not mere celebration of past victories. It was a recognition of a new philosophy, a new era where cooperation and intelligence could shape the future more than force or fear. In the quiet moments after the council, Solara and Jonathan stood together on the balcony, gazing at the stars. "The galaxy is wide," Solara said softly. "There will be challenges, enemies, and uncertainty. But I feel ready now more than ever." Jonathan nodded. "We are ready. Not because we are the strongest, but because we understand strength in all its forms. We face the future together, and that is the greatest power of all." Solara smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "Then let us lead our empire into this new era. Together we will show the galaxy that strength is not only measured by power, but by courage, wisdom, and unity." As they looked out over the sparkling city, the twin moons reflecting on the crystal towers, the people of Zathar celebrated quietly. The Empire had not only survived, but had been reborn, guided by the hidden power of a human mind and the wisdom of its queen. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of promise. Solara and Jonathan had proven that even the most unlikely heroes could shape destiny, and that unity, strategy, and understanding could achieve what force alone could not. For Queen Solara, the hidden power of Jonathan Hale was no longer a secret. It had been revealed in the heat of battle, in the quiet of strategy, and in the hearts of those who had witnessed their collaboration. Together they had forged a new era, one where strength, intelligence, and courage were recognized in all forms, and where the galaxy could look forward to peace, growth, and hope. The stars stretched endlessly above them, a canvas for the future, And as Solara and Jonathan stood together side by side, the galaxy seemed just a little brighter, a little more hopeful, and full of endless possibilities. The hidden power of a human mind had reshaped an empire, and the new era of the Zathari Empire had begun. The calm that followed the retreat of the enemy fleet was deceptive. Solara knew that the attackers were regrouping, learning from their previous defeat and preparing for a stronger, more calculated assault. Her people worked tirelessly, repairing ships, restoring defenses, and ensuring that every part of the city and its fleet was ready for the inevitable return. Yet this time, Solara's approach was different. She no longer relied solely on the overwhelming might of her empire. She relied on Jonathan Hale. Jonathan, though human, had proven himself in ways Solara had never anticipated. His strategies had turned the tide of battle. His calm judgment had saved countless lives, and his mind had revealed a hidden strength that the Queen had come to admire. Solara now recognized that the key to victory lay not just in power or technology, but in collaboration. The humans and Zathari could complement each other in ways that no other species could. In the palace's strategy chamber, Jonathan spread out a holographic map of the galaxy. Lines of light traced the possible routes of the enemy fleet. "They are learning quickly," Jonathan said, pointing to several new formations. "They will strike from multiple directions this time. But there are weaknesses in their approach, patterns we can exploit." Solara leaned closer, studying the map. "Show me," she commanded, her voice calm but commanding. "We will need precision. One mistake could cost thousands of lives," Jonathan nodded. "We will divide our forces strategically. Some groups will lure the enemy into traps, while others strike at their weak points. We will use decoys, terrain, and their predictable patterns against them. The key is coordination. Every move must follow a plan, and every leader must trust their squad and each other." The Zathari generals exchanged doubtful glances. Many had never seen a human command an entire fleet, and some even resisted the idea. But Solara's authority was absolute, and her faith in Jonathan inspired others to listen. "Follow his guidance," she said firmly. "The survival of this empire depends on it." Preparation for the battle consumed days. Jonathan worked tirelessly, meeting with engineers, soldiers, and advisors. He suggested subtle but crucial changes in fleet formations, energy shield placements, and communication methods. He also trained squads to anticipate enemy movements based on probability and patterns, rather than sheer force. The Zathari were initially skeptical, but they soon realized that the humans' methods were effective. Even Solara herself learned to see the galaxy differently, noticing details she had once overlooked. Finally, the day arrived when the enemy fleet approached Zathar. Their ships, larger and more numerous than ever, moved with precision and determination. The sky darkened with their presence, and the ground trembled under the weight of their advance. Citizens and soldiers alike held their breath, knowing that this battle would determine the fate of the empire. Solara stood at the forefront, clad in her crystalline armor, her eyes scanning the horizon. Beside her, Jonathan coordinated with fleet commanders and ground units alike. His calm voice guided every maneuver, his intuition predicting the enemy's next moves before they occurred. The battle began with the enemy launching a coordinated assault from 3 directions. Energy beams streaked across the sky, and explosions shook the surface of the planet. Yet Jonathan's strategy unfolded perfectly. Decoy fleets drew the attackers into narrow canyons and asteroid fields, where their ships became trapped and vulnerable. Precision strikes disabled key vessels, and coordinated squads moved in to neutralize threats. Solara marveled at the humans' ability to think several steps ahead. While she had relied on sheer force in the past, Jonathan's approach used intelligence, timing, and psychology. He anticipated not only the enemy's actions but also the reactions of her own people, ensuring that every move strengthened their defenses rather than leaving them exposed. At one point, the enemy attempted a surprise attack on Zathar's energy core, the heart of the city's power. Panic rippled through the ranks, but Jonathan's calm voice cut through it. "Focus on timing and coordination," he instructed. "Split your forces. Some will defend the core, while others intercept the attackers. Trust each other." Solara watched as the Zathari executed the plan flawlessly. The attackers were intercepted and the core remained secure. She realized in that moment that Jonathan's hidden power was not only in strategy but also in leadership. He could inspire confidence, calm fear, and unite diverse groups toward a common goal. The battle raged for hours. The enemy's forces were relentless, yet every advance was met with precise countermeasures. Jonathan's use of terrain, decoys, and timing allowed smaller squads to defeat larger enemy units. Zathari warriors, once skeptical of human methods, began to rely on his guidance, adapting quickly to unconventional tactics. At a critical moment, Jonathan identified the enemy commander's ship, the heart of their fleet. He proposed a bold maneuver, a simultaneous strike from multiple directions coordinated with decoy fleets to distract the enemy's defenses. It was risky, but the potential reward was decisive. Solara's confidence in him never wavered. "Do it," she commanded, her voice calm but filled with authority. The plan unfolded with precision. Decoy fleets drew enemy fire, allowing Zathari squads to approach the commander's ship undetected. Explosions erupted, beams crossed the sky, and the enemy's flagship was destroyed in a brilliant display of strategy and timing. With their leader gone, the remaining enemy forces lost coordination and began to retreat. As the battle ended, cheers echoed across Zathar. Citizens celebrated their survival, and soldiers honored the courage and wisdom that had won the day. Solara descended to the city, moving through the streets with Jonathan by her side. The people looked at them with awe, recognizing the unusual partnership that had saved their empire. "Your strategies," Solara said, turning to Jonathan, "have proven that strength is not always physical. Intelligence, foresight, and cooperation can be more powerful than any weapon." Jonathan shook his head modestly. "I only guided. Your people's strength and courage made it possible. We succeed together," Solara smiled. For the first time, she felt the full weight of their partnership. Jonathan's hidden power, the calm, intelligent, adaptable mind that she had once underestimated, was now evident to all. The Queen understood that their combined strengths created a force far greater than either could achieve alone. The aftermath of the battle also brought new opportunities. Solara, inspired by Jonathan's insight, began to form alliances with other species across the galaxy. Humans, once considered insignificant, were now recognized as valuable partners. The Zathari began to embrace a new philosophy, that strength could take many forms, and that unity between species could achieve what might alone never could. Jonathan, ever humble, continued to advise Solara, helping plan defenses, training squads, and refining strategies. Yet his influence went beyond tactics. He taught patience, observation, and the importance of considering multiple perspectives before acting. Solara, in turn, shared her knowledge of leadership, technology, and the intricacies of running an empire. Together, they formed a partnership that strengthened not only Zathar's defenses but also its society. One evening, as the twin moons reflected off the crystal towers, Solara and Jonathan stood together on a balcony, overlooking the city. "We have achieved much," Solara said softly, "but the galaxy will not rest. Challenges remain, and our enemies will return." Jonathan nodded. "And when they do, we will face them together. We have proven that strategy, unity, and understanding can overcome even the greatest odds." Solara looked at him, her eyes filled with admiration. "You have changed the way I see power, Jonathan. Strength is no longer just my empire's might. It is also your courage, your mind, and your wisdom. Together we are stronger than I ever imagined." Jonathan smiled faintly, his calm demeanor unwavering. "We are stronger because we trust each other, Your Majesty. That is a power that cannot be measured by weapons or fleets. It is a power that endures." As they stood together, gazing at the city below, Solara felt a profound sense of hope. The Zathari Empire had faced destruction, yet it had survived and grown stronger, not through force alone but through unity, intelligence, and courage, the hidden power of a human mind that had revealed itself in the most extraordinary way. The future remained uncertain, but Solara no longer feared it. With Jonathan by her side, she knew that the Empire could face any challenge. Their partnership had transformed not only the battle but also the very philosophy of the Zathari people. Strength, she realized, came in many forms, and the courage to act wisely was among the greatest of all. The hidden power of Jonathan Hale had reshaped the Empire, inspired its people, and proven that even the most unlikely heroes could change the course of history. And for Queen Solara, that revelation was a gift she would never forget, a reminder that greatness could be found in the quietest, most unexpected places.